Hey everybody, this is the Drive On Podcast, where we talk about issues affecting veterans after they get out of the military. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Drive On Podcast. Today we have a friend of mine from the tech world, Corey Miller. Corey and I met a few years ago at a tech conference. Now, Corey is unlike many of the other guests on this podcast, as he's not a veteran. He does come from a military family. He does have veterans in his family, but he can talk about a little bit about that later. But that's not really the reason why I'm having Corey on the show today. Instead, he was the CEO of a successful company who was well respected and looked up to. And as a matter of fact, I think some people may even say that he's the type of entrepreneur that they want to be. I know I would say that for myself anyways. And why not? I mean, he ran a successful company with a great team of employees. Financially, he was very successful. And on the surface, it seemed like he had pretty much everything going right for him. And who wouldn't want to be like him, right? But that wasn't the full story. And I'm going to let Corey introduce himself, and then we'll get into a little bit about his story. So without any further delay, Corey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Scott. That was a great intro. Yeah, it's nice knowing you. What has it been? 3, 4, 5 years? I'm trying to think back when we first met. And
yeah, I think it's about three years now. Yeah, at least.
Yeah. So thank you for the intro. I started a company in 2008 called iThemes. Ran it for 10 years, actually 11, but at the 10-year mark, sold it to another company. We were acquired and spent the next year transitioning the team to the company that bought us. And then just earlier this year in January 2019, when we're talking, I left the team in that company to start again. And so my newest venture is Leader.team, where I'm helping support leaders across various organizations. And it's been a fun reboot to business.
Great. Yeah. So, I mean, the reason that I wanted to have Corey on the show is because I wanted people to know that it's not always rainbows and unicorns like it may appear to be on the surface. It's not always a picture perfect life, even though it may seem like it is for other people. Corey was a great example of how on the surface it seemed like he had everything going right for him. But underneath that surface, as you peel back the layers, it really started to become apparent that the things were not quite going all that well for him. And so, Corey, you had talked a while back at a couple different conferences you were a speaker at about the concept of the iceberg. Can you go into that a little bit and tell us a little bit about that concept and maybe kind of get into your story a little bit?
So the story I share publicly is meant to help people know that they're not alone. That just like you explained in the introduction, that on the surface it looked like I had everything in the world, but still was hurting underneath the surface. And so the kind of snippet of my mental health journey, I should say, is from 2010, 2011. So on the surface, all these things were going on. It was just a really good time, you could see, if you didn't know me intimately well at that moment. So the concept of the iceberg is, you look at an iceberg and mostly all you see is everything that's on top of the surface. And I call that if you watch the Lego movie, the everything is awesome. It's the curated press release version of our life. And that's what most people see. But under the surface are all the things that, from fear, anxiety, deep down, as you go further down the iceberg underwater, is depression, and severe, some problems that, from time to time we deal with. And so my iceberg back in 2010, the one I share publicly to say you're not alone, is on the surface I had punched my ticket on a lifelong dream, which was to co-author a commercially published book from the For Dummies brand, one of my favorite series of books. We had hit $1 million in revenue at the company that I had started in 2-3 short years. We went on, we're doing some cool things, like we went on an RV road trip with our team from Oklahoma City to Boulder, Colorado for a conference. And, things were just kind of clicking on the public version of what you saw of my life. But under the surface, I had midway through that year filed for divorce from my wife of 7 years. I had, a couple of times slept in our office because I didn't have any other place to go. And when I walked into a counselor's office that year, after all these kind of events happened, he basically said, "You're suffering from depression." Went through a battery of questions, and it was a big wake up call. The first time in my life, someone that was a professionally trained counselor had shared that I was suffering with, at the time, low grade depression, and it was a real sobering moment for me because I thought I was the superhero. I could get through anything, and but it was a big wake up call. And I share that story because, just like you had mentioned, Scott, it seemingly had everything going, and yet was hurting very badly on the inside. So much so too that I'd insulated myself that my own parents didn't know some of the heartbreak I was going through. And they were, of course, the first people I called when my marriage was ending and just things were bottoming out in my personal life. I also should mention, too, that even though we had this cool new office and we went on this RV road trip, that it was the first time in my business tenure at this company that I started in my home and grew, that I didn't want to be there at all. We had a couple of people that I had allowed to basically make me miserable at work. So professionally and personally, my life was really crumbling. And so that's the story I share because although everything looked like I had it together, I wrote this post a couple years ago that said, "Everybody hurts, including me, and it's okay to ask for help." Because I had to go through all of those events to realize I can't do it alone. I don't want to do it alone. And as I started to share my story publicly, for that one reason, that you're not alone, there was this resonating reverb of people going, "Me too." Privately, I'd get emails, text messages, Facebook messages, all those kinds of things. I talked to friends years later and they tell me they heard my story and they sought a counselor after that, or, made specific positive moves in their life to better their mental health. And so I share that story because there's so many people hurting right now and in the world, and often we're suffering in solitude. And I share that because I want to release people, free people to seek and receive help that they need, that they don't have to walk alone. In fact, Scott, this morning somebody tweeted at me and said, "What would be the one piece of advice you'd give or that makes the most difference in your own mental health?" And I said, "Don't go it alone." Just recently, I've had to learn those lessons again, Scott. I keep trying to pull this back and trying to do everything by myself, and I realize I just can't do it alone. I need help. I need support.
Yeah, and I think so. Kind of going back a little bit here, if you think about it, what you're talking about going it alone and everything, a lot of times, especially, guys who are in the military, a lot of guys kind of have that macho attitude, like, "Oh, I don't need that. I don't need to go talk to somebody about my feelings and all this other stuff." And they feel like they can just handle it on their own. They've handled so many other things on their own. But if you think about all these other things that you might do in your life, that you do rely on other people. I think I said to another guest that I had on the show a while back, I don't cut my own hair, because if I did, I'd end up looking like a clown. I rely on the hairdresser or the barber or whatever, whoever you go to cut it and make it look acceptable. Anyways, I might look like a clown anyways, but that's more my problem than their problem. But and even moving, if you're moving out of your house and you're going to another house, you're not going to throw the couch on your back, the full couch on your back, or your dining room table. You're not going to throw that on your own back. You're going to call up some friends or something, and you're going to ask them to come help you move that stuff out. Because if you're to look at your house and all that stuff that you have, that would just be such a daunting task to have to move all of that stuff on your own. And once when you have that one extra person who's there who can help you move some of that stuff, even if it's really heavy, at least there's somebody else who's there who can help you out with that. And so I think people need to kind of understand that it's okay to ask for help. You can't do everything all on your own. And a lot of times with this mental health stuff, you might need to have somebody else, an outside perspective, to kind of help guide you through, to help you see, better, a better way of doing things. And so that's sort of, the other reason that I wanted you to be on the show is because at some point during this whole journey, between the divorce and the depression and all this other stuff, you came to the conclusion that something wasn't right, and that you realized you needed to go get off your butt and go talk to somebody, about all this stuff. But at the same time, on the surface, you're the guy who seemed to be on top of the world. So there must have been a little bit of, fear or doubt about, whether or not you should go even talk to someone. How might that affect other people in our tech community? How they might view you and your company, or how would your employees view you, your own family even? So there might have been a little bit of that hesitation or doubt there. So could you tell us a little bit about that, and how you eventually, overcame that and decided, I need to go get that help?
Yeah, Scott, for me, back in 2010, 2011 was realizing when I'm feel like I'm face down in the gravel and being drugged. I honestly had gotten to the very end of myself, and I just couldn't do it by myself. As funny as it might sound, the first people I called when just my personal life was cratering, just going straight down into the abyss, was my parents. I just wanted to hear my dad, my mom say, "We love you, son. We're here for you." After they got over their initial shock, that's the first things they said was, "Hey," they ran into my life when other people were rushing out of my life. And, but it was past fear and anxiety and all that. I was at the absolutely lowest point in my life at that point in my life, and I needed help. And so I couldn't, hide behind fear or any other reason I might propose, my ego or whatever. It was that I needed help. I remember a week or two after I filed for a divorce, my mom came and just did laundry for me and cooked. And it was just tough for me to pick up my fork and eat. And, but that was the low point of my life, that I just needed people. And, but through that, now I've obviously healed from those experiences. Maybe the scars are still there, but what I realized from that, the great lesson of my life was I can't do it alone. Now I'm telling you, it's a lesson I have to wake up every day and learn again, because I just somehow think I can do everything by myself. I call it superhero syndrome. Where where I just think I've got a cape and a superpower and I can get through anything by myself. And then yet time and time again, life tells me not so fast, Corey, you're merely mortal. And so it's something I continually learn. I wouldn't say I learned it all then and forever. I had a friend ask me, he said, "Hey, I know you share, business acquaintance actually. It said, 'Hey, I know you share about mental health and stuff. Is that all good now?' And I go, 'No, brother, it's every day.' Life throws so many things at you every single day that, no, it's not a one and done thing. It's just like your physical health. You can't neglect, good nutrition and physical exercise and those types of things. Your body will start to deteriorate faster. And I feel the same way about, my mental health. But I want to talk about something that you kind of mentioned, and I think particularly with us guys, there's this masculine culture of don't reach out, don't share your feelings. You shared all that, you talked about that, which is our guys, are supposed to be stoic and not express their emotions, yet we're born as humans with emotions, and we, put a bottle on that, put a cap on the bottle of those emotions. And then there's all kinds of terrible things that happen as a part of that, mainly our health, and then also our personal health, and then our relationships with other people. And I think that's got to stop. the fact that we can't admit that we cry. I've seen grown men, though, the most macho men you could think of, uh, that wouldn't cry, when maybe a loved one passed away or something, but when their dog passed away. And I go, but you've got these emotions that no matter what, I mean, you're a human being. You're born with these things that you should be able to share those appropriately with those that you want to, but we find
Mm-hmm.
ourselves as men being so secluded, and not getting help and receiving help that we justly need. And it affects everything in our lives. And that's part of my, iceberg story is that there was this picture on CNN. There was this iceberg affecting this small town in Greenland. It was basically when it was, kind of melting, it would send parts of the ice off the shelf of the iceberg, and it would cause this little mini tsunami that was potentially going to flood this town of like 100 people. And I was like, that's the way my life is when I don't seek and get help for the things I'm going through.
Right. And I like the illustration of the iceberg. So in addition to what you were just talking about in terms of, having those mini tsunamis who might, come wipe out a little small village on the coast or whatever, uh, the graphic that you have, and I'll try to include this in the show notes too. The graphic that you have of the iceberg is basically that, like you said earlier, everything is awesome kind of above the surface, and it's, your financial success, your business success, and all these other successes. And I feel like a lot of times people, especially nowadays with social media, they are so prone to just putting out there all their successes. They're putting out their A game when their life might be falling apart around them, and that's that below the surface stuff of the iceberg. And if you know anything about icebergs, what you see on the surface is just scratching the surface. There could be a huge, giant mass of ice underneath the surface, and it could be, like in your case, it was the divorce and the depression and all these other things that were down below the surface that you weren't going out there and plastering all over social media. Hey, look at me. I'm, getting a divorce or, whatever, and that's typically not what people do. And I feel like a lot of times people who are getting onto social media and they're seeing how great everyone else's life is, they start to feel worse about themselves because they start comparing themselves to this picture perfect life that they're seeing in their friends or celebrities or whatever, whoever they might be following. And that's not reality. Everyone has crap going on in their lives, where that they're trying to go through. And like you said, mental health is an ongoing thing that you're constantly working on. And if you were to equate it to, dieting or, losing weight or exercise or whatever, if you were to just go on a binge diet and lose a bunch of weight and then just go back to your old eating habits, well, that weight's coming back and probably then some, and so same thing with mental health is if you just kind of let that go, it's going to only get worse, even if things start to feel a little bit better. If you neglect it over time, it'll start to get worse.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned social media because if you go to, let's say right now, today, to my Instagram, you'd think, oh, Corey's got all this stuff buttoned up. Like, oh, he's a beautiful family, which I do, by the way. I'm so thankful for my family, loving wife and things like that.
Yes.
But you get this distorted picture because that's not the whole thing. That's not the whole picture. That's the stuff
Right.
I choose to put out. Like, one reason I do give the caveat that I say I'm sharing a story about my mental health in the past, deeply in the past, is because I'm not encouraging people to say below the iceberg, share all that on, blast that from the mountaintop on social media. I'm not all suggesting that. But we do have the inverse that most of the things we see on social media are just this curated version of what I want you to see in my life. And that's still true for me too. Now, though, I've gathered enough support elements to get help with the things privately, confidentially with the things going on in my life that you just don't happen to see. But, I grew up as a cynical Gen Xer and still am. And I still go, the people that have the most perfect persona online or in public are, I'm always cynical. I go, even the best relationships, even the best lived lives still have hurt, still have struggle, still have suffering going on somewhere under there. That's just not chosen to broadcast those.
Right, exactly. And I totally agree with that. I'm not necessarily saying, go air all your dirty laundry on social media or whatever, just to, make yourself feel better or whatever, because I don't think that's going to necessarily be the solution to the problem. But I think it's important to understand that when you are on social media, that it is, like you said, a curated version of somebody's life that's out there. They're not going out there and putting all the negative stuff, the below the surface on that iceberg stuff onto social media. And it's important to recognize that, I think, for our own sanity and mental health, that what you're looking at is the polished A game, if you will, and it's not picture perfect necessarily.
It's a framed portrait of a glimpse of life that doesn't show the entire fullness of what's going on in anyone's life at any point. You're right.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, going back to, what you're talking about in regards to having that support group of that network of people that rushed into your life. You said your parents were some of those people who kind of rushed in when everybody else seemed to be rushing out. It's important to kind of recognize those types of people in your life. Like, who are those people when stuff hits the fan? Who are going to be those people who run into your life to help you, to pull you back up, when you fall down, or whatever. I think that's an important thing, and I think that's through a lot of aspects of life too. You and I both run businesses, and I don't know about you, but I don't think I could really be all that successful if I was to be doing everything all on my own. Everything from the marketing and branding to tech support and product development and all these other things that go into running a business, accounting and other stuff like that. Doing all of that on your own, you might be okay at all of those things and maybe really good at one or two of those things, but you're not going to be great at everything. And I think your business would end up reflecting that, where it's just going to be an okay company. It's not going to be a great company if you try to do all of those things. But if you surround yourself with great people who could do great things in those different areas, those are the types of people who will basically bring your company up and make it a great company.
Yeah, exactly. I shared this recently, that one of the hardest things in my entire life, but have also given me the greatest joy, is one that it's still like, it's a struggle within me to do this, but is to ask for help. I've been married now, obviously remarried now, my wife Lindsay, and the times when I've just said, I'm struggling, like I need some help, and allowing people the joy of giving help to me. It's so easy for me, Scott. Like, I drive down the road and I'll see somebody that's running out of gas or something, and I never pick up hitchhikers with my kids in the car, by the way, ever. However, I have on occasion, picked somebody up and said, "Hey, where are you going?" and help them get to their destination. And I feel so good when I'm able to even, let's see, as simple as holding the door for someone, as they're walking into the mall or some store. Yeah. I love that. I love giving, generously of my life. But it's so tough to receive it, to think to receive it, up until the points in my life when I crossed the threshold and have been able to say, I need help. I need your help in my life, to whoever that is, my spouse, a counselor, my parents, whoever, friends. And then be on the receiving end of giving and generosity. And a friend of mine said that, if you're not able to ask your best friends, the people that love you most, for help, you're robbing them of the joy of being there for you. And I think about that and the times that I've allowed others to, for me to ask and then to receive help from others and support. there's a great joy. There's a humanity in there that you're seeing the fullness of it, not just the giving, but also being willing to say, I need it. I need to receive that kind of support is a great joy. And it's a message I want to share more and more, need to share more and more publicly, because the times when I have, kind of lowered shields from my ego or whatever it is and said, I need help, and then gotten it from people that love me, the people that rush in when you need help. It's another side that's pretty beautiful to see that in humanity and feel that warmth and love and support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's such a great, important topic to discuss there, where, so many people probably feel like, oh, I don't want to go ask so-and-so, whether it's your spouse or your friend or, even a counselor or whatever. I don't want to go ask for help because now I'm a burden to this person. Now they have to worry about my problems or whatever. And that's couldn't be further from the truth. I think what you were talking about is that people actually feel good to see you, getting better and knowing that they played, a part in that, whether it's a big part, small part, whatever it may be. People feel good generally when they are able to help other people. And I think a lot of times, that macho, manly man kind of mindset that people end up having, we don't want to put that out onto anybody else. We want to carry the burden of our own problems. But we don't realize that we're robbing someone of that joy to be able to, help us out with it and everything. It's just such a great concept. And I know for myself personally, I sought, some counseling after I got back from Afghanistan, and just making the appointment, just picking up the phone, making the phone call to make the appointment, that very first appointment, a tremendous weight was lifted off my shoulders, because like I was saying before, moving furniture out of the house, I'm not carrying all that weight anymore, and somebody else is going to be there to help out. And, that person I've gotten to know over the years that I spoke with, and they enjoy helping other people, and it's like you said, it would be robbing people of that joy, to be able to help them.
Yeah, you think about specifically the veterans, like yourself and others that hope hear this and take steps to bolster their mental health and to get support. You're carrying so much on your shoulders in that moment when you're able to take it. You're being crushed under the weight of what you're carrying internally that no one else may even know about. The moment you're able, like that sense of relief, I've experienced it so many times in my life where I'm taking it on my shoulders. I'm trying to carry that furniture, by myself, all that heavy lifting in the house. And frankly, there are some things too that our friends and family aren't trained to help with. And that's the role of the counselor for me, is there's somebody that's professionally trained, licensed, has taken a code of ethics. There's severe consequences if they veer from what they're supposed to do. And the last benefit is when I unload something to my counselor at Thanksgiving, I don't have to say, could you pass the cranberries? There's some things that I do, the deep and the dark stuff that maybe my family isn't the appropriate people to talk to about that. They can know that I'm hurting, that I'm suffering, that I'm struggling, and help me in that regard. But some of that dark stuff that, I need a professional. When I sit across the room from my counselor, by the way, his name is Kyle, I share something deep and dark. I never have to think about some kind of, you talked about like business partners and team and things like that in the when sharing your mental health story, or my mental health story, for instance. When I talk to a counselor about the things underneath the surface, I don't have to worry about those things. And then I've got a guide, an expert guide who has specifically been trained, years of training and experience to help navigate those things and to recommend options to seek and get health. To have that, those options out there is so vital. And so that's one nuance I will say on under the iceberg stuff is there's still things that I might choose to say I'm hurting to my wife, but I might go to my counselor and say, this is something I'm actually, working through. That's pretty pretty dark down into the iceberg.
Right. And that's one of those things with, just a normal communication with your spouse where you don't want to necessarily, hide the fact that you're hurting from them, because that's not going to help anybody. But like you said, you don't necessarily have to go into those deep, dark details with them either, because they may not know how to respond appropriately. Not that they wouldn't respond from a place of love or whatever. They obviously would want to help you, but they're not the licensed, professionally trained counselor who would be able to give you better direction and better guidance, impartial guidance in terms of what you're supposed to do, where somebody else, even if your spouse is trained professionally, there may be that emotion there, where they tell you to do one thing and maybe it's not the right thing, but it's just that emotion that might push them in that direction to tell you that one piece of advice versus another, and so definitely talking to someone professionally, I think is incredible advice to have there.
Yeah, I've got the relationship with my counselor now where I can at least, I've been with him for 9 years now, and that if I need to get in to see him, I can text him, and pretty well within 24, 48 hours or so, be in there and be able to talk with them. And that's so key. I've referred people locally, in Oklahoma, to counselors, and the biggest question is, where do I start? How do I get a counselor? And I will say, on that nuance of finding a counselor, a licensed professional counselor, that you might find somebody that you just don't fit with. And that means find somebody else. Go find somebody else. Don't just say, well, we just didn't get along. Okay, well, that could actually happen. I've seen it happen. I know it can happen. But then good. The great thing is you get to say, I'm not going to see you anymore. I'm going to go find somebody else, and no harm, no foul. And so make sure there's the right fit, and I don't know of all the resources available to veterans. I hope there is. But there's somebody you can talk to, a chaplain, and get referral, or a colleague that you might trust to get that kind of referral, and then interview them, test them, make sure that it's the proper fit and they understand that particular issues that you might be struggling with. So you at least get that help that you need and support that you need.
I know for myself, I went to the vet center, which is, basically, a place for counseling for veterans, for mental health issues, and things like that. And just so happened that the first guy that I spoke with, we hit it off, and he was able to help me out with issues that I was having at the time, and we really clicked. But like you said, it may not be that way with everybody. You may go and talk to somebody and they may not be the right person. And so ask for somebody else, if you're, at the vet center, or, find some other counselors, some other, there's plenty of organizations that are around that offer counseling services to veterans and even to non-veterans. And it doesn't matter necessarily if they are specialized in veterans, with veteran issues or not. Find the person, the counselor who's going to work for you, and talk to that person. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't cut my own hair, because if I did, I would look ridiculous. But if I went to, go get my hair cut, and the person didn't cut my hair well, and it just didn't work out right, I wouldn't say, well, that's it, I'm never getting a haircut again. I would find somebody else who can, cut my hair, better. So, to me, it's a little bit silly to say, well, this one person didn't do a good job for me. It doesn't necessarily mean that no counselor out there will ever be able to do a good job with you and walk you through, the issues that you're having. So absolutely, I 100% agree with, what you just said there. Well, it looks like we are actually coming up on time here with this episode. Corey, was there anything else that you wanted to say to veterans who might be listening, or family members who might be listening to this? And also, if you want let us know where to find you. And
yeah, I think first and foremost, I hope at least I did when we met in Phoenix years ago, Scott, but it's to say to those who have served our country, men and women, thank you for your service. And the second is, if you're hurting, there's something going on under the surface, please take a first step. Call a counselor, talk to a friend, but don't keep it all bottled up, locked up inside. And like I mentioned with the iceberg that was threatening that town in Greenland, is so many times in my life I haven't realized that by locking all those things inside myself, I was causing more harm to the people I loved most. And I know there's somebody listening today that needs to take a next step or a first step. Please implore you to do so. Scott, you've made this podcast available to be dedicated to help people with that message. And so I hope many veterans that are listening that might be struggling with something, take that first step today. That would be my biggest thing. You can forget my name. You can forget my story. If you take the first step toward healing, towards support that you rightly and justly deserve, specifically as a human being, but also as a veteran of our country and our military service, please do so today. Those you love, and our world will be better for it, having a healthy you in this world. So, and then you can find me as always at CoreyMiller.com. That's my main site. Hit the contact form. You can find my Twitter and all that kind of stuff through there. And I love talking with people. I'm not a professional trained counselor, but I love sharing resources as I can and hearing stories as always of people that have found healing and support and care for their lives. It really inspires me.
Well, Corey, thank you for joining us and telling your story. I really appreciate you taking the time to share that with us.
You bet. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com, or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Drive On Podcast.